Hi guys, it's Janice. Today we have the book Mr. Busy. There has never been anybody quite like Mr. Busy. He could do things 10 times as fast as ever you and I could. For instance, if he was reading a book, he'd finished it by now. He would have finished it by now. He lived in a very busy-looking house, which he'd built himself. As you can see, it had lots of doors and lots of windows. And do you know what it was called? Weekend Cottage. And do you know why? That's because that's how long it took him to build it, only one weekend. One fine summer morning, Mr. Busy was up and about bright and early at 6 o'clock. He jumped out of bed, had a bath, cleaned his teeth, cooked his breakfast and ate his breakfast, read his paper, washed up, made his bed and cleaned the house from top to bottom, by which time it was just 7 o'clock. Busy Mr. Busy. He did things so quickly. Now, next door to Mr. Busy lived somebody who wasn't quite such a busy person. In fact, he was a very unbusy person, Mr. Slow. If he was reading this book, he would read it like this. He'd still be on the first page. And that same fine summer morning, at 7:05, when Mr. Busy knocked at his door, Mr. Slow was fast asleep in bed, still sleeping. He'd gone to bed for an afternoon nap the day before, and somehow hadn't woken up till he heard Mr. Busy knocking at his door. "Who's there knocking at my door?" he called slowly downstairs. "Good morning," cried Mr. Busy. "Can I come in?" And without waiting for an answer, he went inside. "Where are you?" he called. "Upstairs," replied Mr. Slow. So Mr. Busy went upstairs, 2 at a time. Boop, boop, boop. "Good heavens," he said, "you are still in bed." And he made Mr. Slow get up. And he made his bed for him, and cooked his breakfast for him, and cleaned his house for him. Poor Mr. Slow, he hated to be rushed and fussed. "Right," said Mr. Busy briskly. "It's a fine day. Let's go for a picnic." Mr. Slow pulled a face. "I don't like picnics," he complained. "Nonsense," replied Mr. Busy, and busied himself around Mr. Slow's kitchen, making up a picnic for the two of them. It took him a minute and a half. "Right," he cried when he'd finished. "Off we go!" And he bustled Mr. Slow out of his front door, and off they set. As you can imagine, Mr. Busy walks extremely quickly, and as you can imagine, Mr. Slow doesn't. Mr. Busy's right here, and Mr. Slow is nowhere to be found. So by the time Mr. Busy had walked a mile, do you know how far Mr. Slow had walked? To his own garden gate. That's very slow. Mr. Busy hurried back. Come on, he cried impatiently. "Hurry up." "Hurry up? Impossible," replied Mr. Slow. "All right," said Mr. Busy. "We'll have a picnic in your garden then." He added, "Wait a minute though, the grass needs cutting." And he rushed back to Weekend Cottage and rushed back again with his lawn mower, and rushed up and down cutting Mr. Slow's lawn. It took him 2.5 minutes only. It could have taken him 2 minutes, but he had to mow around Mr. Slow, who couldn't get out of the way in time. "Right, picnic time," said Mr. Busy. And together on that fine summer day, they had a fine picnic. Well, actually, Mr. Busy had a finer picnic than Mr. Slow because he ate more quickly and had most of the food. Mr. Busy stretched out on the grass. That was fun, he said. I like picnics. You do. I don't, said Mr. Slow. Tell you what, went on Mr. Busy, ignoring him. Tomorrow we'll go on a proper picnic out in the country. Mr. Slow pulled a face. And, went on Mr. Busy, in order to do that and get you out in the country, I'll have to call for you earlier than I did this morning. Mr. Slow pulled another face. See you tomorrow then, said Mr. Busy, and went home and cleaned his house from bottom to top. The following morning, Mr. Busy jumped out of bed at 5 o'clock, had a bath, cleaned his teeth, cooked his breakfast, ate his breakfast, read the paper, washed up, made his bed, cleaned the house from top to bottom, by which time it was just 6 o'clock. He went and knocked on Mr. Slow's front door. Come on, he cried. Time to be up and about. Picnic day, wake up now. No reply. Come on, cried Mr. Busy again. No reply. Nobody answered him. Mr. Busy went inside and upstairs 3 at a time and into Mr. Slow's bedroom, expecting to find him in bed, but he wasn't. He wasn't anywhere upstairs. He wasn't anywhere downstairs. Bother! I wonder where he's got to. Where Mr. Slow had got to was under his bed, hiding. He didn't want to go to any picnic. No, not he. Bother, said Mr. Busy again. That means I have to go on a picnic on my own. Under his bed, Mr. Slow smiled a slow smile. What a good idea, he said. And then he went to sleep, snoring very slowly. Okay, that's Mr. Busy, who is really very quick and busy with everything. I hope you've enjoyed it. See you soon.